I think if this was made post Star Wars, it would have been a completely different movie.
Oh, I think this movie is begging for a remake, and I can't believe it hasn't
Yeah.
been remade, because I think this movie would be fantastic made today. All right, I have to. I have to be perfect.
Powder? Do we need powder?
Tig,
Attic.
you have just watched the 1976 science fiction film Logan's Run. Logan's Run is about a far-flung future society where people live in a domed city, and you're only allowed to live until the age of 30. And when you reach the age of 30, you are killed. Until finally, one guy who is a Sandman, this is the people who are tasked with hunting down and killing those who try and escape their fate. He himself, Logan, decides to run, seeks to escape the city and escape his fate. So I have to ask you, were you able to get past the incredible 1970s-ness of this movie to get under its skin and see what is actually making it tick?
I tried.
Welcome, humans. I am ready for you.
Okay, every time that I started to enjoy the movie,
I'm already laughing.
something would freaking happen and just drag me back out again, and it would drive me crazy.
What is it?
Runner?
Most of the movies we watch are not from, they're pretty far into the past. So we try to, for the most part, put ourselves in that spot so that we can relate to the movie in the time that it was made. But I feel like even if I was living back then, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this movie. There's just so many things. There's so many things I have on this piece of paper of things. Why, like, and the only reason I'm having trouble describing it is because I liked the idea of it. I liked, like, where it took place. I even like the contemporary art style. I'm not a big fan of contemporary art, but I'm a big fan of Epcot Center, which actually is like contemporary. So I like the aesthetic and stuff. So it didn't really even bother me that it looked like it was filmed in the mall we both grew up going to.
Right, yeah.
You know, like I didn't have a problem with that. Every time I got into it, it was like, oh, okay, now we're fun. Something would happen, like a terrible fight scene or a 40-minute monologue or something, and it would just kind of, you know.
Oh yeah, it's full of things that are very much of its time and not to its benefit.
You better go home.
I'd rather be with you.
Like the love shop that they go through, where just for some reason it goes into like this trippy LSD scene. Okay, naked people are grabbing them and pulling them away from one another or something, and somehow they can't fight against it. Like even the Sandman, who's, you know, basically a cop in the city, he's just helpless against the naked women. It was a city of pleasure. Everyone just, you know, lived a carefree life of pleasure.
I wish it was a little bit better written. Do you know what I'm saying? Like just the way they went about it just like kind of killed me a little bit.
Yeah, certainly in the beginning in particular, a lot of the exposition is really on the nose and clunky, and it's clearly written by a writer who's like, well, I have to explain this to the audience, so these people are going to speak in a very unnatural way in order to get the information across.
That's exactly how everything works. Keeps everything in balance. One is terminated, one is born. Simple, logical, perfect.
Yeah, this movie's definitely guilty of that, especially in the beginning when they're kind of setting up the premise and making you understand who the Sandmen are and what they do. And
Run, runner! Run!
None of the stuff that was said in the first 20 minutes of the movie would ever have been uttered by any of the characters ever to each other, because they all knew that stuff already, which is just a shame because, like I said, I wanted to like it because this is right up my alley. When it started to wear on me was when Logan and Jessica go to the like rough side of the neighborhood. These ruffians show up and they all have knives, and the guy's standing in front of them. He's like, I'm just, you know, I'm going to cut. And he's throwing a knife back and forth and he's just standing there.
Yeah, and the acting is totally goofy in that scene.
I cut up a Sandman yesterday. You better feel sorry for yourself, Sandman.
My time's over.
there's a lot of silliness that you have to kind of accept or get through for the movie. I mean, and sometimes there's some really cool concepts that are hidden behind that silliness. For instance, Box in the sort of in the frozen cavern. It's a really great concept. This idea that it was this automated system that was there to bring in food and to store and secure food for the city, but it kind of got forgotten and locked behind this wall. There was no longer food coming in from the ocean. So when runners were trying to pass through, Box was like, "Oh, well, this is food. I should freeze them." And that's a cool concept, but Box himself is really silly looking.
I'm more than machine or man. Overwhelming, am I not?
I just wish they tried harder with those things, because I feel like this movie could have been a really cool classic.
And as much as I enjoy this movie and have since I was a kid, it's not that. It doesn't.
No.
I don't think that it ranks with the great classics.
And I just want to say something, by the way. Without a doubt, there were stuff stolen for Star Wars from this movie. Whenever they're on the Death Star, that is straight from Logan's Run. The computer room, that's straight up Death Star.
I mean, I think a lot of that is 70s science fiction.
I guess
70s
so.
Science fiction aesthetic, which this movie is rife with. One of the reasons why Star Wars was a game changer is because it looked so different than anything that had come before. There's just this kitschy look that now seems so out of date, where they were trying to be futuristic, but now it basically just looks like Epcot Center. That mall look, like you mentioned before, that mall look, this movie's filled with it. The whole city just basically looks like a big mall. The outfits are very much like a stoned 70s guy's idea of what future outfits would look like. And Logan's Run is, oh yeah, it's a prime example of that. I think there's a lot, at least for me, I think there's a lot to enjoy here.
I would love to watch a condensed, like some sort of condensed version of it.
Yeah, and to be fair, and I've thought this ever since watching it as, when I was younger. I mean, I could do without the initial carousel scene, which goes on forever. I could do without the love shop scene and the whole orgy going on in there. And I can do without the scene in the sort of in the bad part of town. On the other hand, coming up on the ruins of Washington, D.C., and the way that was all presented, I thought was terrific. The idea of the old man out there living on himself.
That I was gonna say, the part I enjoyed the most was when they got outside, like from when they see the sunset. From that point all the way to the end, I actually enjoyed a lot. Like, I thought that was great, and I was totally into it. You know what the problem is too, I think, is because everything leading up to that point, I kind of already knew what was gonna happen, only because there's been so many movies up to this point. It's just like, like I just unfortunately live in the future, so I knew where it was going. But once they got outside, I had no clue. So then it became like an enjoyable, like a new story for me.
Where'd they go? The Sandman and the Green. Didn't you see them?
For me, the movie doesn't really click into gear until he runs. Until Logan and Jessica actually run, that's when everything falls into place. Once they get they get to like that sort of the secret gathering of the people who are helping the escapees and all that. From that point forward, I'm on board. They're going through the sewers and the under portion of the city. I like contemplating, like, okay, so what happened, with the breakdown of society? And I think that the model of the city was friggin' amazing. Huge model that they used for all the big establishing shots of the city and the monorail cars and all that stuff.
Yeah, I love that they just even built all that stuff.
It's just like I said when I gave it to you, be prepared for a very, very 70s movie. Even the score, which is by the great Jerry Goldsmith, the score goes back and forth between some really good orchestral stuff, especially near the end, but also some really not very good electronic music. which was very in vogue at the time.
Yeah.
In science fiction pictures.
There were times when I was watching and I was like, oh, this score kind of reminds me of like John Williams. And then, like you said, though, but then all of a sudden it would switch to like off-key, computerish kind of music, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is the '70s. I forgot." And to be completely fair, I'm for whatever reason not a huge fan of Michael York.
I'm not a big Michael York fan either, and I think most of the acting in the movie is at best okay.
Where do you get these crazy ideas?
A lot of it's really bad.
Look, don't you understand? It's different now because it's me, my life.
Jenny Agutter as Jessica was pretty good.
What do you feel sad about?
A friend of mine went on carousel. Now he's gone.
I think if this was made post Star Wars, it would have been a completely different movie.
Oh, I think this movie is begging for a remake, and I can't believe it hasn't been remade, because I think this movie would be fantastic made today. Because I think the story and the concepts and stuff are great. I mean, there's a lot of little things that go by pretty fast, but things like the circuit, which Jessica was on, which is basically Tinder. People put themselves on this electronic circuit and they get beamed around, and it's basically like, hey, I'm available if you want to have a fling, and it's Tinder.
Hello. Welcome.
Is it fair to say that this is your Ice Pirates?
I think for the purposes of this series, yes, this is my Ice Pirates. I mean, think about some of the crap that you've loved all your life.
Oh God.
You love because you saw it as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Over and over. And this was one of them. I don't go back and rewatch it all the time, but maybe every 6 or 7 years, I was like, you know what? I haven't seen Logan's Run in a while. Let's see how this whole thing holds up. But the run, I still love the run. Still love when they finally get outdoors out there, except for one part. Cheesy, terrible old cliche where she starts to flip out. She's like, I hate outside. And he does that idiotic thing that, I'll just grab the woman and that used to be always a thing. Woman freaks out and the guy's like, oh. It's not a hug, it's a grabble. But the rest of the outside stuff is awesome. I mean, come on, the old man has a bunch of cats. He loves a bunch of cats. What's not to love?
You know they've each got 3 names? The naming of cats is a difficult matter. It's not just one of your holiday games.
And the old man's memory faults are charming. He was great.
I also think that at the very end, there's no doubt in my mind that guy was going to be the ringleader of the biggest orgy.
He probably died the first night. There you go. There was your Logan's Run experience. So for folks who have seen Logan's Run, we want to hear your opinions in the comments, good or bad. If there are any other really awesome or awesomely bad, cheesy 1970s science fiction films that you want to recommend to others,
it's time. There's one that's been on my mind that I've been wanting to give to you, and I've been praying that you haven't seen this because I'm dying to watch it again. I haven't seen it since I was a teenager, and I loved this movie. And it's in the Tig wheelhouse, so it's from the 80s. Eric, you will be watching the 1980s drama starring Cher called Mask.
First you told me that he was retarded, then you said he'd never be able to do anything that regular kids could do. If I had dug his grave every time one of you geniuses told me he was going to die, I'd be in China by now.
Rusty Dennis never listened to the facts.
For academic excellence.
She listened to her heart.
Rocky Dennis.
Together, they built a life full of pride and love.
Mask it is. I look forward to this.
Though, I don't know how it stands up because I haven't seen it since I was a teenager.
Well, we're going to find out.
We sure as hell are. Check us out on Patreon, at Nerd Out With Me, if you're looking to get these videos a little bit early and maybe seeing some extra stuff, because that's always fun and it helps support us. And also subscribe and like and blah, 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 and comment. And thanks for hanging out at the movie club.
Bye.